It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Oh, it was good for a while, and then it very much wasn't. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you for an instant reaction episode of Take Command, recording this just moments after the Commanders game goes final. They fall to 7-1 on the season. 2 games to go, Logan, towards the playoffs. The good news is everybody else they needed to lose this weekend also lost. The bad news is that's the most points Washington has given up since week 2. Not coincidence necessarily. That is also the last game that Cameron Curl missed. There are a lot of storylines in this game, and that is even before we get to the fact that Ron Rivera did pull the plug on his starting quarterback, Taylor Heinicke out, Carson Wentz in, presumably for the rest of the season as long as he is healthy. So much to talk about, but where do you start with this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the score, it probably looks worse than it is. You know, they had a whole bunch of they had turnover on downs. They had 2 interceptions. The defense had a whole bunch of short fields. And, I think for the most part, did an okay job against a really good San Francisco team. Obviously, there was a couple of big plays in there that I think would have been helped by having Cam Curl in the lineup. Benjamin St-Juste obviously was not 100% in this game. So, as much as it's 37 is the worst point total of the season or whatever it is, like I do think there are some mitigating factors that we can kind of discuss as we go. I think offensively, obviously they came out and tried to kind of attack the middle of the defense with limited success. And I think my one frustration there, and I hate to be critical of Scott because like it's hard to be an offensive coordinator in the NFL, but there was like this formula. It was like when Taylor was at cornerback, it's like, we're going to run it inside. We're going to run it. And then I felt like when they kind of found their legs from a play action pass standpoint, the offense kind of came alive. And then he's like thinking, okay, well now we're in play action pass mode. And then Joey Bosa gets that sack fumble on Taylor Heinicke. And kudos to D'Amico Ryans and that whole staff for kind of moving Nick Bosa around the formation a little bit, because I think they were kind of expecting him to line up on the offensive left. He's on the offensive right. You got a one-on-one with Lucas, and that's a tough matchup for anybody. But I kind of feel like I wish that those two things didn't feel so anti each other. I felt like they, like when you're running the ball, you've got this great play action pass that you've worked and cultivated. Come to that a little bit earlier in the game is, I guess,
Right.
my thought. And then don't wait till, the third quarter to do it. And then that's not the only thing you're doing. You can get back to running the football, especially when the game is in that kind of proximity. So I think that was my one kind of gripe. Like, you needed to call a pretty darn good game against the San Francisco 49ers defense. And I felt like he came out with kind of the right mindset, but just didn't mesh the things that needed to be meshed, from a play action pass, from a mixed direction standpoint. And there were elements of that, but I just felt like, and also to give Scott kind of an excuse or an out here, like when you are going 3 and out a lot, it's hard to kind of build a rhythm and kind of sequence plays the way they're supposed to be sequenced.
Sure, but that's also contributing to the fact that you're going 3 and out.
Yeah, I'm not, that's a tough deal. So, I'm trying to, again, be empathetic to Scott here and how hard it is to call a game in the NFL. But, sitting on the couch, I was like, man, I wish there was a little bit more like of a combination. We're throwing a lot of jabs, a lot of body blows here. I'd like to kind of use this jab of the run game to set up a play action pass, which is the uppercut, right? And you see, and again, like, I know I'm probably an eternal optimist here, but I get optimistic when I see Terry McLaurin catching balls behind the defense.
Sure.
I get optimistic when I see Jahan catching a football with not a soul around him for 10 yards. Like, that is good, well-designed offense. I just wish it would kind of come earlier. I think there's like this thought, like this prevailing thought, you need to like establish the run first. You don't. You've established the run the last 4 weeks. Like, everyone knows you want to run these runs.
Last 8 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that, right? Everyone knows you want to do that. So the second I get in this formation, the second I show you this action, you better believe the linebacker is going to trigger in a specific way. Also, the defensive coordinator, D'Amico Ryans, we knew that he was going to have an answer for duo, and he did. He like corner pressures, kind of stunting the line to kind of force the ball to bounce outside. And again, there was no kind of call and response from Scott. It was like, okay, well, we're running duo. They had some success with counter, which I would have liked to maybe see a couple more counters called in there. But again, like that, I'm being nitpicky. We're just coming off the game, but those are some things that kind of jump out to me from an offensive standpoint.
So, Scott, my where I'm landing on Scott Turner in this very up and down year for him is he's a very good play designer and not a very good play caller. He can design a game plan. If it goes well, stick with it. Like, great. If the first option works, he can't counterpunch, or he hasn't shown the ability to counterpunch. I won't say can't. I'll even be nice, and because that's the way you would do it, and you're nicer than me because you have the perspective having played in 10 years and the respect that comes with that, and I'm a blowhard who talks into microphones. So I will defer and put my grown-up pants on instead of being a hot take artist. I will say he has not shown the ability to adjust and counterpunch with the speed that is necessary to win in the NFL. Sure, week to week, he's able to make adjustments, sometimes really good ones, but also sometimes ones that are pretty obvious that should have been made the week before in the first quarter. And this week, it's too focused. It's like tunnel vision, man. Like, oh, we have to run the ball. Ron said we have to run it. Everyone's screaming that we got to run it. It's very reactive, and it's just like head down. And it's like, yeah, but did you not hear the parts where we were going, hey, you also got to mix in the jet sweep. Hey, that sets up the play action pass. And they just don't do a good job of getting their playmakers involved in doses that make sense. And at the end of the day, that's the NFL. Like, the details, I don't pretend to have the knowledge and the capability to put a headset on, sit in the booth, sit on the sideline, and call it in the middle. But from a conceptual standpoint, where the standard is, that is what you have to do, and the ability to analyze it, I can safely sit here and say they did a bad job of getting the ball to their playmakers in ways that made a lot of sense. Sure, Brian Robinson got his touches, fine. But do you mix in enough counter and things like that to get him loosened up? And not have it be as much of a slog as it was for him today? Do you run the jet sweeps and things? They didn't run one to like the third or early fourth quarter with Samuel, and it only got a couple of yards. But like, where is that in the first and second quarter to at least put the threat there that you're going to run it? And then the biggest one,
action, like the action wasn't even. You know what I'm saying? Like the action wasn't there. Like you saw,
it didn't feel like a threat.
Yeah, you saw what like the teams had done, and they were running cross sift with the blocks, but they're also running the jet sweep. They're just giving, because again, we talked about in the pregame and like leading up to, in the podcast leading up to this week, like how important it was to get the linebackers to just pause for a beat. They're a very aggressive, intelligent, fast group, and you just needed to give them some indecision. And I felt like there wasn't enough of an effort to get that done. And also I felt like, one of the ways they can do that is kind of with the play action pass stuff. So again, it was run. And again, a little bit of game flow dictates this. I get it. I understand that, but it felt a little bit, again, reactive is the right word. And this was one of the things we talked about earlier in the week about, Ron says you got to run the football. Yes, you have to run the football, but it's also, you have to marry it with this innovative element of your offense that keeps cultivating and keeps growing. And I just felt like they were at odds for probably 2 quarters, and that's tough. That's tough to navigate.
Yeah. And so the other part of that, like, do you remember my 3-point checklist for the week of what my 3 points were? The first one was to run the, I don't know if I remember all 3, but I remember 2 of them. And they're the 2 most important ones. One was run the ball a borderline absurd amount. And from an amount standpoint, they at least did that. And they were, by the way, in the game for a long time until the turnovers came about. And maybe number 3 was, don't turn the football over. And that would obviously also contribute. But the other main one was get the ball to Terry McLaurin. Like, they score when he gets the ball. I just don't know, like, the correlation of, like, drives where Terry has a catch and drives they score on, it feels like it's a straight line. It's not. It would be very interesting to chart and go back and look at his catches over, let's say, the last 3-4 weeks and see when he gets his catches and when they don't. And what we'll have to do is go back on Wednesday on the podcast after you watch the tape. And honestly, man, I'm going to try to watch some of it this week. I'll see if I have time on Monday, since theoretically it should be out then. But if I can, is this because they took Terry away or because they just don't look at him enough? And even either way, they can cultivate touches for him. They can get screens. There was none today. They can find quick game stuff and make him the featured receiver on some of this stuff to get his target level up. He had 5 targets on the day, and 3 of them were these late ones? Yeah. And he had 1 in the first half, and his second target was the 51-yarder. Like, it's just not good enough. And you have this. What was actually fun is watching, like Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated tweet during the game Washington's a sneaky quarterback destination this offseason. Their weapons are crazy. It's like, yeah, they are. We've been screaming it nonstop all year how good the weapons are here. But it doesn't matter if you don't get them the ball. And yes, they needed to run the ball a lot today. But I don't know. Maybe we just need to talk about running the ball and then having play action. Running the ball and then having play action. And sing that and see if that magically happens. Because to so singularly lock in on one facet against a defense that's this good is a formula for disaster, and it contributes to the fact that your defense then gives up the most points that it has it has all year, because it feeds the turnovers, it feeds bad field position, it feeds all of these other things. And that's even before, by the way, we get to some of the individual calls on fourth down and some of the other things that we probably should talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I was just hoping, I think I was overly optimistic after the second half of the Giants game that was what you'd lead with. You'd lead with the play action pass stuff. You'd kind of get them on their heels, and you can come back to the run game. And I think it's all about good play calling. It's all about subverting expectation, and I think, like if you look at Kyle, for example, like just to juxtapose, because it's fairly easy, like he comes out in the second half and just, runs a bunch of cover 3 beaters, and they execute really well, and they move the ball right down the field and score. Jack comes up with a blitz on that. I think it was a first down. It was the George Kittle touchdown, and Reeves, who had an excellent game, loses contain on the quarterback. Loses contain on the quarterback. Sorry, my headphones did something crazy there. And then they're able to get the ball to Kittle, who's able to kind of make a big play, right? And just the rhythm of that, the feel of that, the touchdown to McLeod, I thought was a beautifully designed play, something that they would use with kind of Deebo Samuel in the game. And then, it's a way to get plus hats to the front side of the run, get you good angles on the second level from an offensive line standpoint. So, there's a rhythm to it. They want to run the ball, but they're setting up play action. They're using the run to set something up. They're using everything. Everything has a purpose. And sometimes I feel like that is lacking, and I don't want to, crush Scott in this. That's not what this is about. Like, I'd like to talk to Scott about it and see what he says about it. But, as of right now, I'm just can kind of go off of my observation, and it feels like, okay, Ron said we're going to run the ball. We're going to run the ball. And then there's no end game to that, which there should be, because then that's where your offense is more effective. And again, you get, like, I thought this was just like just a masterful kind of sequence by Kyle. You run like a scissors concept. So like kind of a corner route with a post to George, right? Off of play action, right? Get the pocket set up. Then you run the same play off of a different action to Brandon Ayuk that ends up being like a 65-yard gain, right? So like just the ability to kind of get different looks and attack the defense with the same concept, but with a different pre-snap deal. It was good. I mean, and again, like Scott has shown at times he can do that. It's just the consistency of it is the thing that's somewhat lacking, I think.
Yeah. Just thinking bigger picture about this team, I think often it feels like it's a lot of really good talent that gets outcoached. And that feels like the last 3 weeks in a major way. San Francisco's better talent-wise.
Yeah,
like San Francisco should win this game, and they did. And so at some point, I kind of checked myself before we started recording and was like, look, we can talk about all these reasons why they lost and how they could have been better and given themselves a better chance. But realistically, and look, they got their butts kicked, 37-20. I know it's a little bit worse than it is, but like really realistically, what felt right was about 34-20. So it's not like it's not like 37-20 is some huge misrepresentation of what it was. The first half was certainly close and felt close. And then the second half, San Francisco had 7 possessions and scored on 6 of them. Like this was what it was. But it just feels like, okay, well, this is a team that's got as much talent or more talent than you do. And you watch what happens when it's well coached and they're a behemoth. And you watch the Giants, who have less talent than you, go and tie you one week and beat you the next, because it feels like they have a more distinctive plan and focus on what it is they want to do schematically. And that's not an indictment of Ron's character or Scott's character or their work ethic. It's just they're not as good at it as these other coaches, and it shows up. And like, that's just, I know it sounds harsh, and it is harsh in a way. I'm not saying I'm not even trying to say like they're not NFL coaches. How dare they have the positions they are? Like, I'm not doing that. But there is clearly a lack of, I don't want to say a lack of purpose, because it's not really the word I'm looking for in the way that's used, but like there's a lack of idea of exactly what's supposed to happen, a lack of mission, I'll call it. And on that's especially offensively. Defensively, it does feel like there's more of one, but I feel like there's definitely room for improvement there. Defensively today, they're hurt by the fact that Cam Curl's not out there. They're hurt by Cole Holcomb not being out there. St. Juice was not even close to himself. So there's personnel issues on defense that are a little bit different. But offensively, like let's call it a lack of mission, where it just feels like they throw stuff at the wall. It works often enough to give you hope because their players are really good, and then then reality sets in, and you look up and you're 7-1, and really poor big opportunities the last couple of weeks against the Giants blown, and you don't give yourself nearly the chance you should have today because you're just out there seeing what sticks.
Yeah, I think I like the way, like a lack of identity, a true offensive identity, maybe. And again, like to Scott's
because like they have it, but they don't believe it. It's like, I guess we're supposed to run the ball.
Well, I guess to Scott's defense, though, like his offense and the offense that he's grown up with is not that offense. It's not a run first offense. It's a throw the ball deep to set up your run game, right? It's kind of the opposite of what he's been doing the past couple of weeks. So in terms of adapting to that, I think he deserves some credit. But yeah, it's and again, if I'm Scott, if I'm defending Scott, if I'm Scott's lawyer here, I say, well, like this is not his offense. This is not the version of the offense he wants to run. He's hampered by the quarterback position. And if he were to get a quarterback in here that can execute, I think the offense would be fine because the playmakers are in place. I think the offensive line, like we've talked about, like they do a good job in certain situations, but from a pass protection standpoint, we knew they were going to struggle against this group because they're not an elite pass protecting group, let's just say, right? And so those are all things that need to be kind of looked at this offseason. And again, like those are things that if I'm Scott, I kind of bring to the table and say, well, look at these things, man. Like look at these things that are limiting us. And right or wrong, like there is a reasonable argument for that. And so the lack of identity thing I agree with, but like is it because they've been hampered by personnel? Probably a little bit. And they're
also just not built. They're not built in that way.
Yeah.
Like they're built one way.
I think that's the thing that's kind of irritating about the whole thing is that, like that's an argument I would make, but like you're kind of in charge of like the roster, if you're Ron, if you're Marty, right? Like that, like you knew some of these limitations coming in, and I know you try to address them with like Carson Wentz and all these different things, but I think in a game like this that you feel, and that's why these games are good. That's why these games and losing like this is good because it shows you truly where the roster is at, where the coaching tree is at, where everything is at. There's no smoke and mirrors about it. Like that's a good football team. The margin for error is very tight. And like everyone says, oh, we beat Philly with a tight margin for error. Yeah, but this is kind of like if you play Philly 5 times in a row, they're going to win four of the 5 because they're the better football team. It's the same thing with San Francisco. You see how small the margin for error is right here. And again, there are some decisions here that I think probably in hindsight could be reevaluated. But the turnovers, right? When I talked to Ron on Wednesday, one of the first thing he says, if we get turn the ball over, we're going to be in a good spot. Yeah, no kidding. But if you turn the ball over, you're going to be in a bad spot because there's no way for you to overcome that. And so again, like when people say like, on these national television things or like when we do our show with Julie and someone says, oh, like, they got to get turnovers. Like, no kidding. Yeah, they got to get turnovers. It's just, what is the methodology to handle that? And the one turnover they got today is kind of serendipitous, right? It's lucky. It's not, it's the receiver.
They didn't really generate it. Yeah.
Right. It's not generated by you. It's fortuitous. And so again, those are all things that are kind of kicking around your head after a game like this. And you look at the San Francisco 49ers turnovers, like they're forcing those in a way that you're not, right? They're creating pressure. They're attacking the quarterback. They're making errant throws. And I think that is a good comparison for fans to kind of say, look at this and compare it to what you have, because that is a legitimate playoff team.
That's right? A 1 seed. When they have a starting quarterback that's not Brock Purdy, that's a 1 seed.
Right.
And the irony is they came in with Trey Lance and like they struggled those early games and, their season looked to be over when he went down, and then Garoppolo comes in and kind of saves the season. And now they're going with Purdy. That's going to be an interesting future decision for them as they continue to try to develop Lance, but that's for the 49ers podcast, not this one. As for the Washington quarterback situation, Rivera has told the assembled press they'll watch the tape, make a decision early in the week. if I would have put odds on it, let's just say you wouldn't get any money for betting on Carson Wentz, and you'd get my entire life savings if you wanted to bet on Taylor Heinicke. Wentz is going to be the starter, at least I would think.
Well, it just seems a
But
little unfair.
what did you make of their performances and of what you do moving forward?
Yeah, I think, well, obviously, like Taylor did an excellent job on early third downs of making some plays, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
he put the ball in harm's way a little bit more than you'd like. Even, that throw to Jahan on the first third down where Jahan kind of plays that back, like that's a tough catch, and you probably shouldn't throw that ball. The one to Terry on the next one.
Yeah, I don't mind that one, though, because if he picks it, so what? It's an arm punt.
Right, but I'm saying, like, if you're judging process,
Sure.
right, you're kind of saying, don't do that. But again, he made some nice plays in third and very long situations, overcoming a disastrous kind of running a performance. And so that's the other thing. Is like you want to give Taylor an opportunity to be successful. And it says, run the football. But if you run the football twice for 0 yards, you're in a 3rd and 10, and you don't want to be in 3rd and 10s versus this defense. And they found themselves in that space, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12, numerous times in this game, and he did a good job of overcoming that. And again, he looked good. He looked settled in the first half. And then obviously there's the sack force fumble. And I really felt like that's when the 49ers defense was kind of like, they've shifted their approach. We're going to rush the passer. And it led to 2 quick turnovers. And I don't care who you are versus that team turning the football over inside your own 30. That's not good. Like, you're not going to win the game. Like, I don't care what it is. Like, it's just not going to happen. So that's part of it. And then, you go for it on 4th down. That doesn't shake out the way you want it to. So really 3 turnovers. The onside kick that doesn't go, that's 4, right?
What?
So 4.
Okay, you played teams in the NFL. How many times did the receiving team get tricked on an onside kick of which side it was going to?
You do that, hopefully. So that's a very common thing. The idea is that you get the person away from the kicker to move in a little bit, to move to, like, so if I'm facing to the right to kick, you get them to move in that direction. And a lot of teams do that. And so you practice, when you're doing hands team, you practice the shift because everyone does it. You practice, we're shifted to the left. Now because the kickers can't just go up and kick it. Like, they just can't do it. Or it ends up looking like what Joey Slide did today, right? They can't like approach like they're going right and then kick it back to the left. Like, you know what I'm talking about, Craig? Am I making sense?
Right. Yeah.
And so
basically my point is, like, why are you trying to trick people? Like, you can't do it. It never works. Just kick the ball where it bounces really high in the air and hope something goofy happens.
Yeah. I mean, but that's like, I think there's a lot of special teams coaches who are like, we need to do everything we can in that situation to get it. And so that's their solution, is like, we're going to
I get it that it's harder now because you can't do the run up. And like this is happening way more often since that was eliminated. But still, kick the ball into the ground, have it bounce as high as it possibly can. Go 10 yards to give yourself a chance, and then hope that there's either chance for you to catch it clean or a gigantic collision where the ball goes. These little, like, I don't know why this works me up so much. I think it's just because it's so impossibly stupid and it never works that you do these little trick kicks around, and it's way too cute. Like, and it's embarrassing when it happens, because you're just like, oh, cool, we did the one thing that literally gives us no chance. You're better off kicking it as hard as you can at the guy with the best hands. Like, literally just laser the thing. Yeah. Like, I'm trying to score on you like it's a World Cup PK. Except for instead of trying to miss the goalie, I'm trying to hit him in the helmet.
I've had conversations with kickers about that, about whether or not that they could actually do it. They're like, oh yeah, for sure I could do that. I'm like, then why don't we just do that? If you feel
just
more
beating it at someone,
blasting somebody, like, because there's a dude, like, I remember I was with a team and they were like, don't stand directly in front of the ball because you don't want to get beamed. But like, if I'm a good kicker, like, and I'm at 5 degrees off, like, I can just blast you with the ball right there. So I never understood why there was this, like, that seems like a very simple solution. Just try to do that and then just have it be total bedlam, and you'll probably get the ball. So again, we're digressing here, but I thought that was a weird thing to do. Yeah, it was like 5:40 left, 5 something like that.
Yeah, I didn't mind that decision. The 4th down ones, I actually don't even mind the decision to go.
I don't mind it either.
I can't stand the play calls. Why is Gibson is not the short yardage guy? Quit trying to make it happen. Brian Robinson gets hit in the backfield all the time. You know what he does? Somehow gets 1 yard. So give it to him. And then, I actually, a couple weeks ago it was last weekend, the Vikings-Colts game. Mm-hmm. Matt Ryan goes for it on the 4th down and doesn't get it. And I heard Rex Ryan on Get Up on ESPN say something that I thought, like, his overall criticism was weird, but like he said something that had a kernel of truth that I never thought of before. But he's like, why are you going on a 4th and 1 with a quarterback sneak who's 100 years old and squats 100 pounds, which is very mean to Matt Ryan because he's not 100 years old and he probably squats more than 100 pounds. However, you look at Jalen Hurts, who squats 600 pounds, and he never gets stopped in those situations. Because the idea is you're getting push. And like, if you think of it as a bunch of individual sled pushes, who can push the most weight on the sled? And if the guy with the ball can push more weight on the sled, then you're going to be more successful. So Taylor Heinicke, who's small and not for an NFL player powerful. I don't know what Taylor squats. It's probably a lot more than me because he's a professional athlete.
He's got a pretty good squat. He's a pretty good squat. But your point is still valid.
But like, he doesn't squat as much as Brian Robinson, and he doesn't weigh as much as Brian Robinson. Yeah. And force equals mass times acceleration. There's your math and science for the day. That's my trainer hat coming on. It's the only equation I know. Force equals mass times acceleration. And Brian Robinson's got a lot of mass, and he accelerates it quickly. So that's a lot of force going in the line, and I like him getting 1 yard better than anyone else on the team, and yet they had multiple 4th and 1s today where they went for it, and you know how many touches he got? 0.
Right. I would say this too. I'd have to go back and look at this, but how many times were they under center in this game? And one of your short yardage situations, you're under center. Like, if I'm D'Amico Ryans, if I'm Warner, I'm like, guys, watch the sneak. They never do this. So that's another thing I would say, like, just again, like, major in what you want to major in. Like, that's one of the issues of being in the gun in those situations is you lose the ability to just kind of go downhill and get the football. Even on the short yardage goal line situation where they went for it on 4th and 1, like, get in the pistol. Like, I don't know. Like, let the back get downhill to the football and just, like, have a car accident. Like, that's what that situation is. If you're going to do that, let's even formation it so that we can say, get downhill. Then not only does that help you get downhill more, but that helps your play action pass. Like, could you imagine if you get Brian Robinson in the dot and just say, run in the A gap as hard as you can? Like, the whole San Francisco 49ers defense is going to be in the A gap with him. And
take a shot on 4th and 1 for all I care. Like,
you can throw the ball to the tight end. So again, that, it's easy for me to do that, but that's the other thing. If you know you're going to go for it on 4th and 1, one of those plays in that sequence should be a pass. One of them should be. Like, if you're the Atlanta Falcons against the Commanders when they did this, right? Their 3rd down play is a pass usually if they know they're going to go for it on 4th and 1, because it's just an opportunity to kind of get something different for the defense to think about. If it's 4 consecutive runs, like, that's what the defense wants. Like, throw something in there.
I don't even care about for the 4. Like, I hear you. Ideally, yes.
Like, that's me. That's me.
But,
that's a criticism I have. Like, because I think that's, if just throw a play action pass in there. Throw like a little, like, because I've scored a lot of touchdowns, Craig, not being a very fast guy, just pretending to block in a man-to-man situation, and then they just drop you in coverage. You're like, oh, what's up? I'm here for a touchdown, right? So
it works all the time in the NFL. I hear you. You're probably correct. I'm just being an absolutist because it's like, hey, they finally ran it, and it's like, just do that all the time, and it's like, no, actually, not all the time.
Even to your point, just get Gibson in a better spot where he can attack the line of scrimmage. Offset gun, the first step is a lateral step, right? He's got to move laterally to go downhill. So his momentum is kind of working off center. Like, get in the pistol, step out, let him run right by you at 17 miles an hour, and then let's see what happens. Like, that's kind of what I'm saying. And then you're never under center. You get under center. Your demeanor, like, you could tell his feet are ready to do the sneak thing. Just again, like, if you're going to do, like, the thing that the Philadelphia does is they always do that. That's their short yardage play. So they have plays off of that work and kind of make the defense go, oh, shoot, they might be doing this, or they might be doing that. When you're under center, which you're never, like, in that situation, I'm like, they're going to run a quarterback sneak. Everyone get ready. Here we go.
Yeah. You know what they also do? They have Jalen Hurts, who squats a house, and then 2 guys behind him pushing him who also squat houses.
Yes.
We need some house squatters.
But and this is another thing. They probably practice that a ton. They probably practice the heck out of that. And I don't know how much we practice our quarterback sneak. Probably not as much as they practice theirs.
Yeah.
So again, like, when you're in the gun, when you're a gun team, you lose some of that flexibility in the short yardage situation.
Yeah. No, I hear you. One thing I wanted to touch on real quick. We're almost at our 30-minute self-imposed time limit because it's Christmas Eve and we have families. Yeah. Well, you have like a full family with kids and everything.
Yeah.
I just have a wife and we're Jewish, so we don't really care that much. I'm just trying to have a nice holiday weekend. Levity. So if Chase Young was supposed to play like 16 snaps at most. It felt like he played the entire game.
Played good, though.
I was going to say, how did he play? But also, like, isn't that a problem? That's like an organizational level problem. You have the snap count. Or I'm kind of asking you, but like, if I'm his doctors and the medical people, and I'm like, all right, we're playing 16 snaps, and if that came from them, and the coaching staff was like, I don't know, hey Chase, how you feel? How you think he's gonna feel? Yeah. He's gonna want to keep playing because he's playing well, and like that's great. Like ultimately, I do want to evaluate him as a football player, but also like the whole reason you kept this dude out was because he's part of the future of your franchise, and he's like the number 2 pick, and he's really important. So could you take care of him? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, I knew if he was active, it was going to be really hard for them to keep him to 8 to 16 snaps. I don't know how many snaps he had. He might have had 16. I knew it was going to be really hard for them to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's just that you're in the rotation. It's like, everyone's like, oh, you're on a pitch count. It's like, okay, so I'm not going to go out there when they call 12 personnel. Like, no, I'm going to go out there. And no one in the game is keeping track of that in the way that they probably need to, And so I'm not surprised by that, even like a little bit. Like not even a micro, like that. That's what I fully expected. That if he's playing, he's playing, and he did a good job. And they didn't start him, and they probably gave him less reps than they wanted to give him. So kudos to them for that. But in terms of saying he's only going to get this amount, like it's not a hard thing. I don't think.
Rivera just told this to reporters. Young played almost twice as many snaps as expected was due to his conditioning. So like credit to Chase. It worked out, but but
hey, if you're a fan of this team and you're a fan of Chase Young, he did a great job. He showed up.
Yeah, I was gonna say what we saw out of Chase though was fantastic because the whole thing was like he can do stuff the other guys can't do, and like that batted ball, for instance, the play that the other guys don't necessarily make, sniffs out the screen. Like he had a really fantastic game, and also I think Logan, you'll have to look at this closer on tape, but like played with the discipline that we were a little bit scared of.
Yeah. So again, like I had my Chase pajamas on by the end of that game. I was like, oh, this is great. He's back. He's feeling good. Again, I thought he had some nice rushes, discipline rushes. I thought he did a good job against the run. Like he just, again, like the physical skill set that he has was on display. Like they run this play called Zorro where the tight end blocks you on like an outside zone reach, and the fullback comes. And I just saw him just like chin the fullback while his hands were on the tight end and just like held the gap. And I was like, there's very few people on the team that can do that. So it's nice to have him back. Hopefully there's no like fatigue or soreness or anything like that going into this next week with the knee. He looked great. So I would imagine he's probably going to be fine, but that's something to keep an eye on with him into this week.
All right. That'll do. You can go change out of your Chase pajamas and put on your Christmas PJs. Right. We'll be back on Wednesday for a full tape breakdown. In the meantime, make sure you are subscribed wherever it is that you're listening or watching right now. We, of course, have our full episodes available to watch at youtube.com/@1067 The Fan. If you are a YouTube person, I'm still posting some of the shorter clips as well. youtube.com/@Craig Hoffman, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. for the audio. See you all Monday as well for the Hoffman Show, 3 o'clock on the Team 980. Until then, Merry Christmas, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fan's YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.